So this is really an annual stock take of where we are right now in terms of how our climate is changing, let alone the forecasts of how things are going to progress into the future.
Again, I hate when, I don't know if you still use Facebook, I definitely don't, but I hate when you see people on Facebook who have no background in science. I'm not even saying listen to me. I'm saying listen to the actual scientists, the people whose day job it is to tell you why these things are happening, what will happen next, and what we can do to tackle it. Like, can you imagine if I said, oh, this scientist is really smart, he should go and manage Liverpool? You'd be saying, you're crazy. We don't want a scientist managing Liverpool. We want someone like Jurgen Klopp. That's who we want managing football. So why can't you do it for things as important as the climate, for crying out loud?
I'm as real as a real can get. What you see?
Buongiorno freaks and geeks, welcome back to the channel. First time being in the studio for a while on account of not wanting my camera to melt. Climate change is no longer just a distant threat. It's a harsh reality we're facing every day. Rising temperatures, more extreme weather events is all becoming the new norm. And Britain's not immune to these changes. In fact, we've recently hit a rather unwelcome record. The UK has just experienced its hottest summer on record, with temperatures soaring above 37 degrees Celsius in June. New record for number of days reaching 35 degrees Celsius or above. Sounds like a dream come true for some, but trust me, it's a nightmare. This milestone may sound impressive, but it's actually a significant problem. The heat wave has had devastating effects on agriculture, water resources, and public health. With that in mind, let's look at this quick report from BBC News. Before I press play, please don't forget to hit the buttons for like, subscribe, and tell me down below your experience of the heat wave.
The UK's climate of the 20th century has now gone, according to experts who say once extreme conditions are increasingly seen as normal.
Okay, something you really need to pay attention to there. It said the experts, you know, the people who have studied for many years what climate is and how climate changes and what it will look like tomorrow. I hate reading in the comment sections of videos like this where people say,
oh, it's just summer.
Or,
I remember this happening in the 1970s.
First of all, sir, do you really think 35 degrees happening in the 1970s is anywhere the same as 35 degrees in the 21st century? First of all, there wasn't that many cars back then. There wasn't that much pollution, and global temperatures were a lot less than they are today. How dare you even suggest that 35 degrees back then was anything like it is today, or something that was seen as the new normal? You boomers make me sick.
A new report from the Met Office says that in the warmest areas, the hottest day of the year is typically 4.5 degrees warmer than in the 30-year period to 1990. And the report warns that British infrastructure, housing, agriculture and health systems are based on a climate that no longer exists.
And that completely makes sense. You know, before, when people migrated to this island, it was very, very cold, which meant they had to build houses that kept the cold out and the heat in. What do you think happens when we have at least a week of hot temperatures? You have human beings cooking inside of their houses, and not in a way that they enjoy in any shape of the imagination. So yeah, people still dismissing this as almost the greatest threat, apart from the United States, but the greatest threat to humanity. You look very ridiculous right now.
The report's lead author says it shows climate change is upon us right now.
For many people, climate change has perhaps previously seen something that's talked about scientists, but they maybe don't necessarily expect to see the impacts so much in their day-to-day lives. I think that is very much increasingly, people are experiencing climate change. And I think, this is because the way we experience this is through these extremes.
And I'm completely sick of living through history. I've said this for consecutive videos for a while now. It feels like every single day we're living through some new record. Can we just have a bit of a boring life and, redistribute the wealth a bit? That's all I'm asking for. I don't need these record temperatures on an island like Britain. It makes no sense. And people scaremongering over Ed Miliband simply trying to get to net zero. It's essentially just fiddling along the lines. It's no real change. And this whole scaremongering, actually doing the bare minimum to tackle climate change, is actually obscene and disgusting to see, especially coming from newspapers who are bankrolled by billionaires who are leading the way in terms of emissions, doing all those private jet flights, along with having their sticky little fingers in the pies of companies that have the biggest carbon footprint that we've ever seen in the history of humanity.
Well, I'm now joined by our weather presenter, Sarah Keith Lucas. So, Sarah, what's the main takeaway from this report?
Well, I think that line that we just heard, that the climate of the 20th century has now gone, is a really shocking thing to hear, because it was the climate that most of us grew up with, remembering from when we were children as well.
Yeah, because humans don't live for that long, of course. I don't understand why that means anything. Even if no one that is alive today knew of the climate back in the middle of the 20th century, even if no one alive today knew of that climate, it still doesn't mean we shouldn't do something about it. Don't just do something because it's within living memory. Do it because it's for the good of the planet and good for future generations. That's why we should be doing any of this.
And what we would consider as really extreme back then is now really the norm, happening so much more regularly now. So in that previous climate from 1961 to 1990, in 1 in 5 years, we didn't see temperatures of 30 degrees at all. But this year, for instance, we've already had 25 days above 30 degrees, 10 of them the past 10 consecutive days. So this is really an annual stock take of where we are right now in terms of how our climate is changing, let alone the forecasts of how things are going to progress into the future.
Again, I hate when, I don't know if you still use Facebook, I definitely don't, but I hate when you see people on Facebook who have no background in science. I'm not even saying listen to me, I'm saying listen to the actual scientists, the people whose day job it is to tell you why these things are happening, what will happen next, and what we can do to tackle it. Can you imagine if I said, oh, this scientist is really smart, he should go and manage Liverpool? You'd be saying, you're crazy. We don't want a scientist managing Liverpool. We want someone like Jurgen Klopp. That's who we want managing football. So why can't you do it for things as important as the climate, for crying out loud?
And just how quickly are things changing with our climate in the UK?
Well, they are changing fast, certainly, especially in terms of the temperatures and the extremes. I've got a temperature map to show you, which shows just how much things have changed in that 30-year period. We had temperatures across the UK very rarely above an average of 11 degrees. But now they've shifted much, much further north. So, yeah, I think we've got a graphic we can show. Perhaps it's not well. Here we go.
Yeah,
there we go.
that works.
Yes. So an average temperature of 11 degrees. Back between 1961 to 1990, it was just confined really to the far southeast, the London area. But now it's pushed its way much further north. So if you think about somewhere like Lancashire or the Vale of York, they've got the same sort of temperatures we would have seen in Greater London in that 30-year period between 1961 and 1990. So it's been a rapid increase in temperature.
Look at this. The rash is getting stronger, and still people will say to you, don't worry, it's just normal. How can we, in all good conscience, sit and look at this and say, yeah, Greta Thunberg was wrong? Or those people, those Extinction Rebellion folk who sat and glued themselves to the motorway and just inconvenienced you for a day, they were wrong. They were more wrong than what we're seeing right now on this map. with temperatures just, it's like a virus. It's creeping up there and it's getting more and more red. Golly. Unbelievable stuff, to be honest.
What we're really seeing here is that those higher temperatures have pushed not only further north across the UK, but also uphill as well. So the very cold places like the cold climates in the north of Scotland, in the mountains, they are disappearing. The cold spells are disappearing as well. So it's not just the heat that's an issue, but when we don't see the cold weather and the cold frosty conditions, it doesn't kill off the insects and the bugs that we've traditionally seen when we get those colder spells happening through the year as well. So climate change really affecting all times of the year.
And affecting all ecosystems, like this weather presenter just mentioned. Forget about, oh yeah, some insects are going to survive even longer. There are going to be other animal groups that are going to die out because of these extreme temperatures. And if this is happening in the UK, you can imagine how temperatures are climbing in the continent of Africa, you know, across that equator bit, where temperatures have always been hot but are now going to be even hotter, where people won't even be able to inhabit. They will need to leave and find somewhere else to live. And guess where they will probably come? It'll be in Europe. We're going to have whole climate change refugees coming to Europe. And if you think that's not going to affect Britain as well, I've got a bridge to sell you.
Indeed, and it's not just the air that's warmer, it's also the waters around the UK as well. What does the report say about our oceans?
Yeah, so this report also looked at our oceans and our rivers, as well as just what's happening in terms of the weather and the climate in the skies. And what they found, that actually we've seen more marine heatwave conditions in 2025, 297 days of heatwave conditions. That's more than we've ever seen before. And of course, it's not just the temperature of the sea that's continuing to push the air temperature up as well, but it is also sea level rise. Now, we hear about sea level rise in terms of climate change. Now, that's really accelerating. I can show you another graphic which tells us about how quickly the sea level has been rising. We haven't got that one, don't worry, but it's basically the past 30 years that we've seen a huge increase. Sea levels are now 20 centimetres higher than they were back in 1901. And it means that when we see storms affecting the UK with those higher sea levels, when we see high tides, we could see some more catastrophic coastal flooding down to the higher sea levels combined with our changing climate.
Sarah, thank you. That's our weather presenter, Sarah Keith Lucas there.
I'm sorry, why was she saying all of this stuff with a smile on her face? What part of this report makes her so happy? Sea levels are 20 centimeters higher. You know, if you push someone's head down, they can drown in 20 centimeters depth of water. And she's just saying it like, you know, whatever. I mean, what? Can we like actually just pause for a moment and take stock of what is really happening? And this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, because like I've shown in a previous video, newspapers have known about the effects of human input on the climate for 100 years. It was in a newspaper from either Australia or New Zealand, I can't remember which one specifically, but they knew from then what was happening in our climate. I think it might have been from 1912, but yeah, they knew what was happening with our climate. And the fact that now water levels are heating up, they're having record temperatures, humans are indirectly impacting sea life. You know, the whales, the sharks, all the fish, the crabs, the octopus. We are now impacting their existence when we can't even swim to their depths. Do you know how insane that is to say out loud? If you are a fan of the economy, which humans have completely made up for the record, farmers are struggling to keep their crops alive, and water companies are warning of potential shortages. But I'm more focused on people's lives. The heat waves has claimed lives, especially among the elderly and vulnerable. It's a stark reminder that climate change is real. It's not just about melting glaciers and rising sea levels. The UK's climate is changing, and it's changing fast. The latest reports by the IPCC warns that if we don't take immediate action, the consequences will be catastrophic. Rising sea levels, more frequent natural disasters. It's a bleak future that we can avoid if we act now. So what does this milestone really mean for Britain? It means that we need to take climate change seriously and take action. The indulgences of multinational companies and rich people need to be curbed. Invest in renewable energies and prepare for the worst. It's not a challenge that we can afford to ignore any longer. Any action to not tackle climate change head on is a political decision. But that's what I think. What do you think? Tell me down below. I would love to read it. If you stayed with me until this point, thank you so much. I really appreciate the support. If you enjoy audiobooks, I have voiced one on spotting red flags early in relationships. Link in the description below. And remember, once we understand politics, we will make better choices. Don't forget to hit the buttons for like, subscribe, and I will see you very, very soon. Ciao.